Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a really interesting conversation between one of our subscribers and Chat-GPT. It's basically a critical analysis questioning this idea, this assumption maybe, that the UK leading the world on climate action may not be a good thing.
That's right. And this conversation, it doesn't pull any punches. It asks, if the UK's path looks unrealistic technically, maybe unaffordable the way it's being done, and the direct global results are tiny, should anyone else copy it?
Okay, so let's get into that. The conversation highlights something specific, how UK policy seems really focused on, sorting out the energy sector for net zero.
Right, heavily weighted towards energy transformation. But from the latest IPCC report AR6, it's clear, isn't it, that tackling climate change is a way broader problem. You've got agriculture, land use, transport, buildings, they're all huge factors.
Absolutely, and this narrow focus on energy, according to the conversation, raises two really big questions. Firstly, can the UK actually afford this strategy in practice? And secondly, what difference does it really make globally?
Right. Let's tackle the cost first. The figure that jumps out from this material is £17 billion a year and rising on subsidies, green levies, carbon pricing, etc.
Yeah, it's a significant number, recently highlighted by Catherine Porter, a UK energy expert. Catherine points out that these costs get loaded onto electricity bills and feed through in general taxation.
So it hits everyone, but disproportionately.
Exactly. It makes it regressive.
Yes, it hits the poorest households the hardest. Chat-GPT claims that overall, as a slice of GDP, it's about 6%. It's technically affordable for the country as a whole.
I was surprised our subscriber doesn't challenge that, but as the conversation continues, it became clear that technically affordable isn't the same thing as practical to implement.
Exactly, and here's a really interesting twist that ChatGPT points out. This way of loading costs makes electricity more expensive than gas.
Yeah, which presents a conundrum, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, if you want people switching to heat pumps or electric cars, making the electricity they need more expensive than the fossil fuel alternative, it is the honest approach, but it undermines the goal.
And the analysis also mentions that grid infrastructure investment is lagging. That seems like another hurdle for renewables.
Definitely. It highlights this internal tension in the policy design, and it also touches on public awareness, suggesting, most people probably don't realise the full range of costs that net zero brings, and the disproportionate impact.
On the poorest, you mean?
Yeah. Or even that climate action needs to go way beyond just energy, bringing in farming, land use, transportation.
ChatGPT suggests that complexity might just, frustrate people rather than reassure them.
Okay, so the cost structure is complex, potentially unfair. What about the actual global impact? The conversation seems pretty blunt here.
It is. It basically concludes, look, even if the UK completely decarbonises, the direct effect on global temperatures by 2100 might only be, 0.01 to 0.02 degrees centigrade? So insignificant.
Which really challenges that whole leadership argument, doesn't it? The idea that the UK does this to inspire others.
Exactly. The policy model seems both technically shaky and the economics are structured in a way that's maybe not sensible or fair.
Therefore, it looks politically fragile.
So is that really a credible model for others to follow?
Good question. How does the conversation cover the UK government's specific claims? The punching above its weight stuff. Pioneering offshore wind, influencing carbon pricing globally. COP26, climate finance.
Yeah, acknowledges those points. Sure, the UK has certainly been active, but then it brings in the counter-arguments, like offshore wind. The claim is always that it's getting cheaper and cheaper.
Right.
But this analysis points to recent problems. The recent CFD auctions, the government contracts, they've had failures. Developers are reporting rising costs.
Whoa, and we're told that wind power is getting cheaper all the time.
Indeed. So, is that model actually viable or exportable right now? Our subscriber questioned this.
That CFD example is quite specific, showing a supposed success story hitting bumps.
Yeah, and our subscriber also critiques this idea of influence more broadly, asking where's the tangible results, especially measured in actual temperature reduction. It often feels a bit abstract.
Which ties into another critique mentioned, right? About potentially leading based on modelling or targets that might just be unrealistic. It mentions criticisms of the Climate Change Committee's assumptions.
Precisely. The CCC is supposedly the government's independent advisor, but the analysis suggests there are questions about whether its cost and timeline assumptions are, robust enough. Are we potentially following a plan that looks good on paper but doesn't stack up in reality?
Okay, so pulling this all together.
The picture this conversation paints is one where you have significant costs falling regressively, very small direct climate impact globally.
Real questions about whether the leadership examples like offshore wind are currently working as advertised.
Is there potential for public backlash if the full picture, including the costs and the scope beyond energy, becomes clear?
Yeah.
So is the UK's approach really charting a sensible path others should follow? That's the core question raised.
And it leaves you, the listener, with this quite provocative thought. If a country's climate policy is viewed through this critical lens, maybe technically flawed, structured in an economically questionable way, politically vulnerable, and globally marginal in direct impact, is that genuine leadership, or is it more like performance?
And what does that distinction mean for the global effort? Certainly something to mull over.
Definitely. And listeners can read the conversation in full on our subscribers' Substack at baffledbyscience.com.
Until the next time.